Okay, this presentation video is going to be called the timing disc. So we're going to introduce that to you on this morning. There's a test question. This is what kind of leads us to this. It talks about what kind of tool would you use to measure degrees of crankshaft rotation? And so this is the timing disc. And so it's basically like a flower pot, if you will, with a protractor mounted on the end, and then a needle and this would have like some rubber bands that would come with it that you would put on the nose or the spinner of the airplane, and then the rubber bands would go wrap around the prop to kind of hold this in place. Then, of course, as I grab the prop and rotate it, this will tell me those degrees of travel that I'm rotating that crankshaft. The timing disc is used in conjunction with the piston pin plug stop. And I'll illustrate this to you in just a second here. So this tool comes out of the closet when you have an engine that does not have timing marks on it. So there were some engines produced or sometimes the way particular propellers get mounted, sometimes ring gears and stuff end up covering up the timing marks. So you might see in your book, and you're looking in this section as well too, there was also another tool that could do this thing, pretty fancy device called the TimeRite. And TimeRites were around for years and was another tool available in lieu of dealing with timing marks. And sometimes you had to take too many things apart in order to do the timing, and so that's where either the timing disc or that TimeRite might come out. I'll also be introducing a couple other types of tools to you as well, but we're kind of addressing this one test question, the timing disc. Okay, I'm going to grab this guy and first show you what we'll be doing. So of course, the timing disc would mount out on the end of the propeller, and then what you would do is you would be threading the piston pin plug stop into the cylinder. So I'm just going to go in there a little bit for now. Okay, then of course I would make sure I'm coming up on compression stroke too. So I would have wanted to rotate this thing and make sure I got air coming up. Okay, so then what I do is I start rotating this thing up into that compression stroke, and so I come up here, and eventually you kind of see how the piston came in contact with the top of the piston. The piston plug stop hit the top of the piston, preventing the piston from continuing on up to top center. So then what I do is I would take that timing disc, it's mounted on the end of the prop there, and I would zero things out at that point. Then what I do is I start rotating the prop backwards, going around, so where the piston is heading back down in the cylinder, since it couldn't go up the top center, would head back down in the cylinder, and then hit bottom center, and of course I would keep rotating, and then it would come back up to top center and recontact the pin. Okay, and then I would look at the protractors mounted out there, and I would see how many degrees it was able to travel. All right, then what I do is I took that number, how much it did travel, subtract it from 360, and then then I rotate this back in the direction where it comes back up and where it contacts the pin. Then I would remove this thing, get it back out of there, because now I know exactly, I haven't moved the prop yet, I know exactly how many degrees I am before top center that I was unable to travel up in the cylinder. So I'm going to go over on the board and illustrate this to you as well in another way here. Make sure we can see this okay. Okay, so we know if I've got a piston sitting at top center, where the connecting rod is straight up and down in there, pushing that thing up in the cylinder there. I know if I'm at top center, now as I did, I grabbed that prop and I rotated the piston down to where I hit bottom center. That is 180 degrees of travel. And then, of course, if I keep rotating, it comes right back up the top center again. Then I know that's, of course, 360 degrees. So in this situation over there where I had it sitting, I've got the, and we're, actually rotated down a little bit. So the piston, in that pit, I put the spark plug hole, I got that piston pin plug stopped sitting. So I brought it up on a compression stroke, and the piston came in contact with the plug. Okay, then what I did was I zeroed out the protractor, and then because I can't go up the top center, I can only go back down. So what I did was I rotated the prop, and then where it hit bottom center, and then came back up, and I read how many degrees it was able to travel from this point down and back up. Okay, so let's say I read on there that it traveled 270 degrees. All right, so then I rotated right back on my compression stroke, and I, of course, removed this plug stop out of there. So then, of course, I need to figure out where am I. So what I did, as I know from the top down and back up, is 360. I was able to travel 270 in there. So 270 from 360, of course, is 90. So I remove that. So that means if I set that protractor to 0 and I rotate it up and back down here, that would have been the 90 degrees. So I know I'm sitting right now, I haven't moved anything. I'm sitting where? 45 degrees before top center. So that's how I do that. Then with my timing disc re-zeroed, so I'm getting ready to put magnetos on or something like that, and my spark advance is 25 degrees before top center. So if I'm sitting at 45, I simply would move this on the protractor 20 more degrees, and then that would put me at my normal point of spark advance. So we're not asking you to be proficient in doing this. Basically what we're doing is we now have a knowledge of what the timing disc is and how it's measuring those degrees of crankshaft travel. So we can do some of these things, especially like it would be timing magnetos and putting magnetos on. One more thing I want to mention. Let me pause for just a second while I think of that. Okay, got my memory back. So what I do is, if I ever do have to use one, and because it's kind of you don't use it for quite some time, and then all of a sudden you drag it out where you got a situation. So what I do is I do come to an engine and kind of train myself. Because, for instance, this Lycoming down here, they put timing marks. You can see here's TC dash on here, and here's probably the 25 before it, and then those have to line up with that dot that's right there in that starter. So it's not the center of the starter, it's actually a dot that you can just barely see over there that the timing mark would go on. So what I do is I put the timing disc on here and go through the process and then see if I ended up, so I know that I'm proficient in using the tool. And so that's what I do, is I go to an engine that does have timing marks, put this stuff on there, run it through the process, and see if I ended up where I'm supposed to be. So like I said, we use it so few and far between that we lose our proficiency with it. So that's how I get proficient again, is practice with that thing on a known engine. Okay, I think that'll wrap up what the timing disc was all about. So now you can all easily answer that question.